In this video, I'm going to show you how to make an automatic Hytale mob farm. This method is super cheap to make and can easily automatically farm pretty much any mob that spawns in a structure, meaning you can use this to get some automatic free sources of cobalt, thorium, crystals, cobblestone. So let's get into how to set it up. Now, the first thing you gotta do is find a structure that spawns the mob you want. Preferably, it'll be a structure that spawns a large amount of mobs. Those will be a bit more complicated to set up, and it'll take a bit more time, but give you more output. Meanwhile, structures that only spawn one mob won't give you as much, but it'll be a lot easier for you to set up the farm. How this works is when you load in a structure, it spawns all the different mobs in the exact same place. Even when those mobs are defeated, you can come back at a later point and they'll have respawned in. For most structures, they'll respawn about once a day at varying times. So really, it's just come up to your structure. Now when you load in, you are going to need to figure out where the mobs spawn. For things like this, at this Outlander outpost, all of these mobs are coded so that they only stay in the same spot until an enemy is sighted. There are also mobs with sentry rolls that will travel back and forth between specific points, and then there are also roaming mobs that will just wander around the structure. Things like the Chorks at these Chork camps. These will be the hardest to narrow down exactly where they spawn, but you can make the process much easier by loading and unloading the structure, causing the mobs to reload in back at their spawn points. If you need to know more about how to narrow down exactly where the mob spawning works, I found this video right here that has really good instructions on how you can narrow it down. The video itself is for how to disable the mob spawns, but can also be really useful for the farm. Now this may be a little slow at first, but you want to go in and you need to mark out the area where the mob spawns. This may take a couple tries at first, depending on the amount of mobs in the structure. This may require you to have to come back at a later point in time with the mobs respawn so you can better narrow down the exact points they spawn. Now that you have narrowed down where all the mobs spawn, you need to make a spike block. Spike blocks can be found very commonly in many different structures, but can easily be crafted with a singular iron ingot for the metal spike traps, and 2 logs and a tree sap for the wooden ones. The iron spikes do about twice the amount of damage from the tests that I've run, so if you're going for larger mobs that tend to maybe not stay put, you'll want to use the iron spikes. If you're low on iron, there's plenty of structures out there where these spawn, so you can just grab them from there. But the wood spikes are also an alternative if you need to use those. And the final step is to go to your structure and place a spike block on your marked areas. The mobs will spawn there and get dead from standing in the spikes. They can still spawn when in the spikes, even though it will immediately end them. Now once you have gone in and added spikes at the spawn position of every mob, you should now be able to visit the structure once or so a day, collect all the loot sitting next to the spike blocks, and you should be good. If there are some mobs that leave the spike blocks before they end up dying, go in and add some extra spikes around it to take them out. Using this method, any material that can be obtained from mobs spawning in structures can be obtained this way, which is actually a surprising amount of items. The best place I've found for this, there's this structure I found that spawns a skeleton Praetorian, I think is the name. Just the one mob in the same place, and it drops thorium, skulls, essence of fire. I think there's a chance of cobalt, and what's even nicer is I didn't even have to craft any of these spikes. There were a ton of them covering the tops of the pillars of this place. I didn't even have to narrow down the exact location. I just spammed spikes everywhere all over the place. In the general area I saw him, I ended up removing the ones which were a bit far away from the actual one, which weren't doing anything, which is also really easy since you can insta-mine them with just your fist, not taking durability from anything. So this method of farming is pretty good. While it does defeat the mobs fully automatically, there is no way of collection at the moment. You could theoretically pull it off by putting yourself in a minecart and going around past the structure and all of the mob spawn locations so you can pick up their items easily without you having to do anything. But I imagine for most people it'll be much easier to just run by once a day, wait a couple seconds for all the mobs inside to die, and just collect all your free stuff. And that is how to make an automatic structure-based mob farm in Hytale. If you want to see the process that it took for me to figure out how to make this mob farm, I've made a video on that, which you can find right here. But now it's your turn to take what you've learned and get creating. I'll see you later.